In this video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive analysis between White Mage and Astro, and without getting into too much of a discussion, we're going to get right into it by starting with the damage kits. However, actually I should probably give you a lay of the land first. So White Mage skills I'm going to keep in this column, Astro skills I'm going to keep here. You're going to see some tooltips later on that go down here where I think that they're relevant to add context, and then you're going to get a nice view of where I sit a lot of the time in Solution 9. So a lot of skills have a lot of overlap between White Mage and Astro and are basically equivalent. This is going to be things like Glare 3, or is going to be the same as Fall Malefic, Dia, Combust, Holy Gravity. Things do take a departure through Presence of Mind and Lightspeed, and why these I don't consider equivalent I will go into further discussion later. However, obviously Astro has a lot of OGCD buffs, White Mage has the Lily system, which allows them to cast on GCD spells, which that spell keyword is very important because it allows these spells, for lack of a better word, to scale with abilities that increase healing magic potency. That includes things like White Mage's Asylum, as well as White Mage's Temperance. That will become very relevant later in the discussion. And the Lily system allows you to cast these on GCD spells and then reclaim the damage as Afflatus Misery. So when people say that the Lily system is really worse than the off GCD system, I don't necessarily believe that to be true at all, if I'm honest. That I do believe to be patently false because it's just a different way of approaching the healing and recovering damage. But moving on from that, I will be honest, the FF logs data I do have somewhere here. God, where do I have it? Or did I not post it? Yeah, I have it here. So you can see very clearly Astro's damage is far higher than White Mage's damage. That is not a concern of mine in this video, and why I say that is going to be because we could literally throw on a few damage numbers onto Glare, and then we could call it a day. And so I'm really not as worried about that because I do believe that that is a very easy fix. So moving on from the damage kit, let's talk about the basic healing kit. Cure, Benefic. I'm not going to insult your intelligence. You know that these spells are literally the equivalent, so basically the equivalent. Like Celestial Intersection without the tooltip here, I know it heals 200 HP, but it has 100 less potency shield. Divine Benison is just a shield, has no heal component, it's a 500 potency shield. Like, they're basically the same. So where things do start to split, and I do believe is worth discussing, is Tetragrammaton and Benediction and Essential Dignity, which is what Astro gets. That is roughly equivalent. And I know many people might disagree with that, and that's probably why I'm going to start talking about it here. So Tetragrammaton, you obviously get 2 charges. Benediction, you obviously get 1 charge. Essential Dignity on Astro, you get 3 charges. And so I view these as basically being the same thing. So the functional use case is single target burst healing. And obviously, like we just talked about that, Astro is getting 3 erectile dysfunction charges, and White Mage gets 2 Tetragrammatons and then 1 Benediction. I'm gonna say this outright is Tetragrammaton. Obviously has a charge time that's longer than Essential Dignity, and then Benediction's cooldown is 180 seconds. Do I feel like Benediction's cooldown might be a little antiquated in the current version of the game? I think it does. I think maybe it would be better as a 2-minute cooldown, but this is usually not too much of a point of contention, thankfully, or rather, maybe not thankfully, but in the current game where tanks are rarely taking excessive amounts of damage. Mind you, the current Savage tier, the tanks are definitely taking a lot more. We'll get more into discussion of this for the single target healing section, but I do believe that this could be considered a point of pain, that Astro definitely has a lot more to play with in terms of single target healing, and this is definitely a good, how to say it, primer to that discussion. And hey, why is White Mage's Tetragrammaton a longer cooldown, 50% of the additional 50% of White Mage's Astro's cooldown? I do believe that that is a fair discussion. And why is Benediction in the current game still 180 seconds, so 3 minutes? So with that being said, why do I say that? Is because I really don't believe that Benediction is so much better than Essential Dignity. And to say it in a very fair way, we're not playing the same version of Final Fantasy XIV where Dark Knight's Living Dead will still strike them down on the spot if you don't heal them to full, or heal equivalent to 100% of their HP, where Benediction is a nice gotcha button. So Benediction definitely had a lot of use that way, but usually even in M4S, when the tank is like invulning, like a warrior tank is using home gang, they're invulning it, their HP is clearly going to be 1 because she does 2 tank busters and then an auto attack. This is like first tank buster that they invuln. I've never felt Essential Dignity just blowing 2 charges there has been it's been lacking in any capacity, but Benediction obviously is, in general, it's a comfortability, but again, I really do think this is where White Mage's failure in the single target department compared to AST starts to rear its ugly head. But if we're looking specifically here, I don't think that either truly edges out that much, but if I had to give it, I would actually give it to the Astro. So we're actually gonna edit this. This is how I indicate, like, hey, the Astro won. I'll just make it a little bit of a purple background. Never mind, AST wins, in my honest opinion. Like, if push comes to shove, but I don't feel like this is the biggest point of contention. Now, I want to talk about Plenary Indulgence versus Horoscope, and both of them I again do feel are effective tools, and that they both are very similar, but they also have a little bit of a different use case. So we're going to start with Plenary Indulgence. For 10 seconds, you're going to tack on 200 healing onto any healing AoE spell that you cast. So this is going to be, obviously, if Latest Rapture is going to be your bread and butter, this is going to be your healing spell of choice. Obviously, you need 1 lily, which comes back every 20 seconds to cast this. That Plenary Indulgence literally just tacks on 50% more healing, bumping from 400 to 600, and that is really, really nice. Plenary Indulgence can clearly get a lot of mileage because you could blow all 3 lilies, and that's going to be 600 healing from that. And theoretically, let's be a little optimistic and say that, yeah, you can throw in 2 more on GCD. Either it's Medica or Medica 3. If you hear me say Medica 2 on the video, don't be surprised. And then theoretically, Plenary Indulgence could add 1,000 potency. Although, obviously, the point of healing is to minimize your on GCD casts, and so definitely take that with a bit of salt. But Plenary Indulgence definitely would win out in that particular scenario, I would say. However, Horoscope is very nice. It does not require any commitment of any sort of resources in order to get its baseline 200 potency, which to me, in my little scholar brain, is very similar to Fey Blessing, although obviously Fey Blessing does have much more potency to it. But again, a free AoE heal is a free AoE heal, and just like I'm not going to snuff if you only use 1 lily with Plenary Indulgence, I'm not going to snuff if you just use Horoscope just for that OGCD heal. Again, free, doesn't require any commitment of resources, and it's really nice. However, you do see, which I do think that there is a lot of use cases for that, for the record. However, Horoscope, in order to activate to 400 potency, does require 1 commitment of a damage loss, because Astro does not have a lily system that reclaims on GCD AoE healing. It is going to be a damage loss cast of Helios or Helios Conjunction, in which case Horoscope absolutely will heal more. Like, if you do need to cast that on GCD heal, it's better to get as much out of that as you can, and Horoscope definitely will go to 400. However, Horoscope obviously will fall in successive burst healing scenarios where Plenary Indulgence for 10 seconds will be able to add to all of that. And so I did a little bit of fence sitting earlier in my analysis. Like, I do stand by both are effective tools and should be used often. However, I do think White Mage wins, and I do still say that I don't see this as a point of balance concern or contention. I really don't. White Mage wins if push comes to shove in large AoE situations. I promise I'm not going to type too much more. It's just some of this sheet was done way earlier, and then I'm like, people don't like fence sitting, so I'm not going to. Now we're going to be talking about the capstone abilities, Liturgy of the Bell and Macrocosmos, and this is where things start to get a little spicy. I'm also going to start following the sheet a lot closer because there are going to be definitely a lot of mathematical calculations here that I do believe are going to be very relevant. So Lily Bell and Macrocosmos kind of serve a similar idea that there's going to be a lot of burst damage coming in, and you're wanting to resolve it ideally only using this one OGCD, which Macrocosmos, even if it's well, Macrocosmos is on the GCD, but you like reclaim the damage there. You get what I mean there. It's not a damage loss. So with Lily Bell, your maximum output is going to be 2000 HP, which is roughly 80% of your max HP. I did it in a very crude manner where, hey, Lily Bell is going to be, with my current HP pool, it's going to give me decent healing. I'm still not best in slot because RNG is not my friend, but you get the idea that it's going to be roughly 80% of your max HP with 2000. Macrocosmos, you can get 100% of your max HP in theory, because like if we saw from P3S Phonics, it did have a like mechanic that lowered everyone's HP to 1, so Macro definitely can do that. However, how realistic is that? Just going over this. Oh yeah, and then I used a horoscope for reference, because 200 is the minimum amount of HP that Macrocosmos is gonna heal. And so minimum of Lily Bell is going to be 1000, and obviously we're just going to cut that in half, and so roughly 40% of your HP is going to be the minimum that you get from Lily Bell, which is also very powerful utility, but we're going to get into that in a second. Macrocosmos's minimum is 200. Obviously that is going to be 8% of HP. I used horoscope for reference here, obviously significantly weaker. So another thing is Macrocosmos is an on-GCD spell, and so that does allow you to move a bit, although it being used as a mobility ability, I do believe is a generally kind of bold, kind of interesting statement to make, because usually that's not going to be the focus of why you use Macrocosmos, although if you don't have anything else to use during that 3 minutes, I guess you could. I'm not going to say don't, because I guess you could. Why not? But I think you get my point here. However, generally speaking, I do feel like White Mage has a really big advantage here. And I apologize because I am going to start reading some of the sheet because I want to make sure that I don't miss any points here. And so why I feel White Mage has the advantage here is because while numerically Macrocosmos can squeeze out ahead with 100% max HP, I do honestly believe that it is a mistake to fall prey to numbers and ignore like the functionality of the skill. Macrocosmos requires the user to decide when to activate it and Microcosmos to execute that healing. Obviously, Lily Bell needs to be placed too. I should say, like, Lily Bell does not magically place itself. The problem with Microcosmos is that it can have a true failure state. Like, if the Astro doesn't pop it at the proper time, either you are going to underheal with it and not get what you could out of it, and if you undershot it, your party is going to die. Kim, people are dying. There is additional consideration that Lily Bell, and this is where I really think Lily Bell is very, 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 very much my preference between the two abilities, is that Lily Bell will trickle 400 potency heals every time you take damage as the White Mage. And that really does buffer the HP of the party quite a bit, and so it reduces the chances of your party's HP falling to 0, because each AoE, hey, you're getting a little trickle heal, and so it's a lot safer than with Macrocosmos, where honestly the party's HP does not get that buffer of HP. It's really all or nothing, and so Lily Bell kind of staggering it, I do feel is much more powerful. And, oh yeah, the anecdote that and this is true, I've seen Astros with Macrocosmos wipe the party because they honestly expected more mitigation for a group stack, which I do believe is fair. Like, if you're a barrier healer, please don't Chad. Please use your mitigations. Like, at least throw out like a Sacred Soiler or a the Sage's equivalent. It's currently escaping me. I know it though, but basically, like, White Mages in the same situation, I've seen Lilybell manage to prop up the HP of the party, although obviously we ended up with less of a buff to the HP, because like the mitigation just wasn't there, but the Lilybell, because it kept bumping up the HP, didn't cause a wipe. Now, I will say, like, another situation where Lilybell does have an advantage is absolutely going to be where burst healing is required. Like, if you... like, and we're talking again about these minimums here. You see this minimum 1000 versus 200. So you could instantly put down Lily of the Bell or Liturgy of the Bell, sorry, and then you pop the bottom bell, and then all of a sudden everyone gets 1000 pounds of healing. That is 40% of HP, which is definitely a sizable amount and can absolutely, in a pinch, and I'm not saying to like generally plan for this, but in a pinch you can pop your 3-minute cooldown and absolutely dump some AoE healing really quickly. Macrocosmos really can't do that because it needs you to really take that damage, and 200 potency of healing for a 3-minute cooldown, see, I don't consider that as free as Horoscope personally, but yeah, I'm gonna be real. Yeah, how to say that? What else do I say here? Lilybell at 1000 potency is significantly more effective in that use case. Yeah, nota bene. Obviously, other tools at your disposal before. Yeah, that's another thing I should say. Like, obviously, and I think I did say it, but just to be sure, generally speaking, Lilybell's ideal use case isn't to burst for 1000, but it is there as a backup option. And so I do really believe between Astro and White Mage that White Mage's Lilybell is much more powerful than Macrocosmos. Now we are going to get into the discussion of Temperance versus Neutral Sect, and obviously their follow-up abilities. Temperance follows up with Divine Caress. Tooltips are here for anyone who doesn't know. Neutral Sect is followed up by Sun Sign. Tooltip is here. So who wins is very context dependent, but people are going to say that I'm fence sitting, so I will give it to the Astro. I will give it to the Astro, because I know people don't want me to fence it, and I do believe Neutral Sect is stronger than Temperance, just from the scenarios presented in-game. So a few considerations here is, first off, you are a healer and you want to minimize on GCD healing. Neutral Sect, to be activated, requires on GCD healing, specifically aspected Helios conjunctions. I read the tooltip. I'm gonna keep saying aspected Helios for years, aren't I? Helios conjunction. And then, so that's an on GCD, and that is a damage loss. And then Temperance and Divine Caress are off GCD abilities, and so they do not require any GCD commitment. Not with lilies, not with Medica 3, nothing. Sun Sign, however, can be accessed off the GCD here, and so that means you could pop Neutral Sect, not use any of these effects here, and use Sun Sign just for the 10% mitigation. I have done that in the current Savage tier, and yes, I did that in Party Finder because my Barrier Healer was competent and Neutral Sect's shields were not necessary. So again, this is very context dependent, and so I'm going to say in fact, for M4S, menu mechanics, no justification with a competent Barrier Healer to apply those barriers. I have literally lived that situation, it's very true, but Sun Sign was very helpful. So, refer to this beautiful Narnia paint image. So, more gear or less difficult content, basically you're going to get less spiky incoming damage. Your usefulness of barriers, especially, and that includes Divine Caress. Divine Caress's barrier usefulness also falls off a cliff, but less so. It's an easier pill to swallow because it's literally free. It's an ability, it's free. It doesn't require damage loss, it doesn't require any of that. It doesn't cost MP. So usefulness of barriers, especially those on GCD barriers, falls into Narnia and dies in Hellfire. That's just how Final Fantasy XIV works. So if you never go into a Savage fight ever in your life, you probably are just like, Neutral Sect, what even is that? Like, what even is that? Where, at least when you're using Temperance, sure, you get the mitigation. You don't even really care about that. But Divine Caress, with its heal over time, which is 1000 potency of heal over time, I might be getting ahead of myself. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. But, you'll feel that in normal content. So this is a very true image about Final Fantasy XIV, and so keep in mind that a lot of this is context dependent, and if you are never doing content that can justify an on GCD barrier being required or helpful, I'll say helpful, then it will be useless. Neutral Sect is useless, and Temperance with Divine Crest will just be useful because it's free. So we're gonna go into mitigation durations. Temperance provides 20 seconds mit, Sunshine gives 15. There may be situations where you want to hit multiple instances of damage coming into the group, whether it's AoE, whether it's the tank buster, like maybe, and this is contrived, I realize that, but M3S does follow up after the AoEs to the party, multiple AoEs, up to 8 of them, with like 8 punching the tanks, and if your tanks aren't invulning, you could argue Temperance lasting a little bit longer could hit more. Again, that's very contrived. I'd say there are weird fringe scenarios here where the range definitely can be picky here. Like, how to say it? Temperance is a big range. Sunshine, 30-yard radius. Like, there can be situations where the DPS are in Narnia, but like, I'd say the range of Divine Caress is something I've noticed not hitting those DPS that love Narnia. So 15 yard yalms is much shorter than 30 yalms, which is much shorter than 50 yalms. So White Mage both wins and loses. And yeah, I mean, you could argue, hey, isn't the berries that you apply 20 yalms? And I'm pretty sure I have it here. We'll come across it somewhere, but I'm 90% sure that the AoE heal is 20. But if we look at healing amps, they're literally both amplifying your healing by 20%. So whatever. Now, healing outside of the GCD, so we're not talking about diving into Neutral Sect, which amplifies the heal over time effect of aspected Helios conjunction. We are going to be talking about a 20% healing amp, but that's again something that the White Mage can also dive into. But if we're looking strictly at the abilities, Divine Caress gives you 1000 healing potency, which is aka 40% max HP heal if you let it fully tick. So White Mage does win on that. However, if we talk about barrier strength, Divine Caress is 400 potency here. It just flat out tells you the potency, whereas if you do a little bit of maths, not advanced math, but just a little bit of maths, you can determine, hey, the barrier strength of Neutral Sect is going to be roughly 600, and so if an Astro does cast a barrier, it is going to be stronger. So that is definitely really good, and I will say, oh yeah, I do have a note here. Sage's baseline barriers, they're baseline AoE barriers, so like we're talking about Succor, and we are talking about Sage's Eucrasian Prognosis. These are going to be roughly 360 potency each, or no, they are going to be 360 potency each. And so Divine Caress, we could sneeze at it, but it's still at the same point in time a pretty good barrier. But Astro's barrier strength is stronger. And then I do talk about single strength barrier, and I do even say it here. I feel absurd even proposing this, but obviously Astro is going to win here. Astro is also going to win here because Astro can also stack this with the Spire card, which is another 400 potency barrier, which can also be stacked with Celestial Intersection, which is another 400 potency barrier. And so technically, if you really had a tank that really didn't like to mitigate and was about to eat a tank buster that would not be so excessively damaging that they would like hit like 1,000,000 damage taken, you could stack Neutral Sect single target barrier with Spire barrier with Celestial Intersection barrier, and absolutely don't forget to throw on a oh my god, I know the word, Exaltation for that extra 10% mitigation, and then 500 potency of heal when it expires. Oh yeah, Bowl and Ewer are at the same time. I guess you could throw like the arrow card to amplify that even more. Astro does have a lot more single target options, although there's a good question about how often is this going to be useful, but we'll talk about that later. But basically, if you can justify the need for it, and you do have Neutral Sect active for, say, AoE healing, you do have more option with Neutral Sect as an Astro to apply single target barriers. Although, are you going to pop Neutral Sect just to apply a single target barrier? I think that is contrived, so we're moving on. But Astro would win there if that's a thing. So, barrier frequency, however, is actually very relevant to this discussion. And so White Mage only gets one barrier that they can apply during their entire Temperance window. Astro, we're just going to min-max it, very easy calculation. They can get 8, or theoretically more barriers applied there. And this is where Neutral Sect versus Temperance. Neutral Sect really does absolutely dab on and trash Temperance, and I feel really bad about it because White Mage doesn't really have anything to answer this. It doesn't have anything at all, and I am going to propose like a buff for Temperance later, where basically we're turning Overheal into like up to 10% of each target's maximum HP, but we'll talk about that later. But like, Neutral Sect absolutely dumpsters on it. It's like, if there's a mechanic, say like Rotting Heart or Fuse Field, or who knows what's going to come up next, like let's say that the tanks don't use Limit Break for M4S after the transition, when she's doing all those spiky things. I don't even remember the name of the mechanic. I just press buttons during that mechanic. I don't even think. But theoretically, if the tanks didn't use that, I feel that Neutral Sect would have a much higher fighting chance than White Mage's Temperance during that, because like, you just have the ability to overshield and much more than that, and the successive shielding I definitely think would be a lot more useful, whereas White Mage definitely bumps into a lot of overhealing. And like, I make notes here saying, yeah, before Dawn Trail, White Mage's Temperance could be viewed as offsetting this difference, because White Mage has that mitigation component that Justice threw out. Isn't that nice? Where Astro didn't. Well, welcome to Dawn Trail. Astro now has Sun Sign, and so Astro gets that persistent mitigation and shield at the same time, and your Divine Caress does not keep up with what Neutral Sect can produce. And obviously that is all off of the GCD. And then Astro is on the GCD, so that is where we kind of go back to that chart about on GCD barrier usefulness falls off of a cliff if you don't need it. So my summary is, and this isn't fence sitting, easier content that does not justify on GCD barrier application. White Mage wins by a landslide. Why are you applying a Neutral Sect barrier if our party's HP isn't even going to go below 50% if you just use Sun Sign for a demit? Like, stop. But content that has a high frequency of extremely spiky damage, White Mage just can't compete. It has no tools for that. Like, Divine Caress doesn't do enough. It will do a lot of overheal because you will fill up the party's HP bar very easily relative to, like, if some of that got converted to a shield. So I do think that is an issue. And I do want to say that this is impacted greatly by if your barrier healer is confident or not. And this may be considered controversial. This may be considered something that annoys people. But if your barrier healer is not confident, and if they are not protecting the party's HP above 100%, and this is really, really a point of pain, a lot of AoEs are hitting more than 100% of the party's health. White Mage would not have an answer to that, and White Mage, I will get into later, doesn't have an answer for that as much as Astro. Specifically, yes, I am alluding to Collective Unconscious, which we are going to get into a lot of talk about. So White Mage is really helpless with a weaker barrier healer. Astro can also be very helpless, but Astro does have at least much more agency. They have more tools to feel less helpless. A bad barrier healer will still spell death for the party, but at least Astro has a little bit more of a fighting chance, if that makes any sense. And now here is where we're going to get into the deeper mechanics of the bread and butter healing kit, where things start to get a little dicey here. I have also expanded the sheet because I'm making sure everyone can see all of those tooltips here. And so we're gonna go at this at a few different angles because I think just clear cut and dry adding up the numbers is just so deceptive. And so we're gonna aggregate the heal over time effects. And so Asylum, 800 potency. Also remember, Asylum does provide 10% heal amp, which is going to be like really useful. It is actually really useful. Where's the tooltip for that? Oh, come on. Did I not put an Asylum? Yeah, I got it here. So you see this? It increases HP recovery via healing actions. Not healing magic, healing actions. So this includes OGCDs by 10%. And so that is so freaking awesome. That is absolutely a non-trivial effect. So that means it's going to impact like this, like other like heals and stuff, and it's going to obviously impact your lilies, where if you look at Temperance impacts healing magic potency. Neutral Sect, healing magic potency. That means only spells. Very important. So I do think that that's a significant effect. Now, Collective Unconscious rolls up to 600 potency. However, it does provide 10% damage mitigation, which is incredibly useful practically. I think that this, which is what I was just talking about, gives Astro significantly more agency over managing incoming damage, because so many AoEs are going above 100% HP threshold that yes, I will dig my heels into the sand and say this makes Collective Unconscious so much better than Asylum that you could delete Asylum and give me Collective Unconscious, and I would think that that would be a white mage buff. I'm not going to fence it. I refuse to do. If you deleted Asylum and gave us Collective Unconscious, I think White Mage would be buffed. I genuinely do. Asylum, I love the ability. But when it comes to these breakpoints, if you cannot make the breakpoint, it does not matter how many heals you amp. It does not matter. The party has lost its 2 ranged DPS. Your damage is about to fall off the cliff. Now you need to revive. Now they have res disorientation. I find Collective Unconscious so much more powerful of an ability, and that is with me even saying here, and this is absolutely very true, every Astro under the sun who's ever gone to Party Finder can attest to this. You will have this heal not hit, even if you go right into the middle of the arena, even if you are wedged in between that boss's M3S's big, bulky, buff, hairy ass cheeks, and then you use Collective Unconscious, you will still likely miss 2 of the DPS, and I'll let you guess which 2. It has a 8-yard radius. That yalm, it's because I will get a comment saying that. Yalm, 8 yalm radius. Whereas the mitigation is 30 yards, which is super duper incredibly good. The mitigation will hit the party, but that heal over time, so when I look at this heal component, keep that in mind. It's not realistic to always say, I'm going to always heal the party for 600. No. But when you do, which you should be able to at least some of the time, it's really nice. Celestial Opposition is just straight up 200 potency heal and then 500 over time, so 700 total. The EU, I really do like this card. So many people are shitting on this card. It is an off GCD, aka free regen effect for 1000 potency. I'm not going to lick the gift horse in the mouth. I have absolutely used the EU. Do I always use it? No, I don't, because usually the tanks are self-sustaining. Like, if you're with a warrior, are you even playing healers most of the time? But until, like, certain points of the fight where the EU has gone. This card, I can tell you, has gone a ton of mileage from me. In fact, all of them have. But, like, the EU especially, I really do like it. But it's 1000 potency. It's really good. Now we've unpacked the HOTS, let's talk about what I'm going to call burst aggregate. There's probably a better word for it, but like this is not a realistic usage of the skills, it's just me adding up all the numbers. White Mage, Asylum is 1000, Assize is 400, Afflatus Rapture is 400. I'm not including Cure 3 here, we're going to talk about that in its own section. White Mage total is 1800. Astro, adding up, and again, it's very ideal to imagine the range. Actually, 600. Oh, it is 600. Yes, 18. Sorry, Sorry, I thought it was 500. Never mind. I did the math right initially. But 600 plus 700 plus 720, because we are presuming that you're letting it cook. And then Lady of Crowns. And then we have Horoscope, which again, Horoscope is base OGCD here, which is only 200 potency. You add that up, and then you get 2,620, which is, how to say it? Obviously, if you look at these numbers, Astro heals significantly more, but that's why I am breaking it down, because like in burst aggregate also isn't really realistic. So in trivial content, do we want to also consider Divine Caress to be a potential off GCD heal over time effect that you use to heal up the party? Because remember, Divine Caress, if we scroll up, is going to have that 200 potency of healing over 15 seconds, which is going to be 1,000 potency of AoE healing. And so we can add up 1,000 to the baseline number. But again, it's a 2-minute cooldown, but 2 minutes is less than 3 minutes, so it's more accessible. The only cooldown wasted is the cooldown not used. I will leave it to the philosophers to debate in the comment section below. Have fun. I don't know. To me, we're moving forward. No, the philosophers can deal with that. But, how to say it? Oh yeah, I even say the choice is yours if you want to factor this in. Up to you. And then I do make the decision to not factor in Divine Caress into here, because I do feel like it starts complicating things, and then we start dragging in Neutral Sect into this argument, and then things get really freaking weird. And I do want to talk about the bread and butter skills in compare and contrast. So let's talk about the 60-second burst aggregate here, and this is a more realistic view of the skills. And so Afflatus Rapture is dependent on the lily system. You get 3 lilies every 60 seconds, you get 1 every 20 seconds, so I'm just doing that. Astro cooldowns generally revolve around 60 seconds for these. And then Lady of Crowns you get once every 2 minutes, depending on your astral or umbral draw. Asylum, you get once every 90 seconds. Assize is every 40 seconds. And so I did a little bit of funny number punching, and yes, Asylum has a funny number. Also, Asylum, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but for Asylum, it's not 1,000 potency directly. I did add a little bit of numbers here. So it's baseline 800, and then like because of that, I added another 200 potency onto it, because I do believe, since it is impacting OGCDs as well, that I believe at least 200 would be a pretty fair assessment of it. And then if we add up those 60-second burst aggregates, White Mage is going to be roughly 2,466 or 2,500, and then Astro is going to be almost the same, but it's 2,420. Nice. So, how to even say it? Though I feel these calculations are a bit off, because AST size is not used explicitly to heal, though its ability to catch chip and residual damage is really good. So, interactions with the kit. So, this is where things start to go a little funny. White Mage is what we're going to look at first, even though I kind of want to start with AST. But Assize is an ability, has no interaction. Asylum is an ability, but will scale with healing action buffs. So, and I mean, you could argue, okay, could Assize work with Asylum? Yeah, because it healing action potency, and Assize is an action, like, you kind of get where I'm going with that. But my main concern here is really Afflatus Rapture, because you do cast Afflatus Rapture obviously so often. That is really your workhorse as a White Mage. And obviously that's going to scale from Asylum's 10% boost. It's going to scale from Temperance's 20% boost, because Afflatus Rapture is a spell. And so, and you can even see here, it's a spell. Although I want a tooltip here, I should have done that. But you get these scaling, and then obviously Plenary Indulgence is a plus 200 potency per cast, or you could view it as like a 50% baseline. So that's really good. And so I do some very basic math here of Afflatus Rapture Asylum 440, Afflatus Rapture Temperance 480, Afflatus Rapture plus Plenary is 600, and so you do get a lot of interactions with White Mage's kit. Whereas with Astro, you're really not seeing a lot with like Collective Unconscious, Celestial Oppositional Horoscope, or like essential ES. What Earthly Star. My god, of course, I know that one. But basically, these are all abilities and not spells, and so you don't really get the scaling with Neutral Sect, because Neutral Sect is also like Temperance, and it's healing magic potency. And so these abilities are not going to scale with it. And then Horoscope, I do want to say you get 200 extra potency to make it a 400 heal by casting an on GCD. So for the sake of this, we're going to assume that you're not casting an on GCD and that instead you're using the freebie. Because if we start factoring in on GCDs, yeah, I think that the math starts going a little weird, although I don't believe that it skews the outcome so much that I'm too worried about it. Like, if we're looking at these numbers, I think that that's a reasonable thing to say. So if we're looking at a Flatus Rapture and Plenary being very bread and butter combo, like there's really no excuse to not use it frequently. Like it's basically like saying to an Astro, hey bruh, don't use your Earthly Star to resolve this damage. The Astro's like, but why? Because I said so for my contrived example for my spreadsheet. Like, it's not realistic. So I'm not going to say a white mage isn't going to do that. So we can add onto Plenary here for 60 seconds total above, which, let me say this. I don't believe it's contrived to say 1 lily at least will be combined with Plenary Indulgence, even 2. But I do believe that 3 might be a little pushing it. But if you are going to shove in 3 times 200, which is Plenary Indulgence, and add that onto the baseline total from before, you do get 3,000. So that's going to be like your ceiling in this instance. And then Astro, obviously, because we saw no interactions there, is going to be 2,420 still. However, if you do Temperance Asylum Plenary, the math does get a little wonky, but do you realistically want to use Temperance and Asylum at the same time? Like, maybe you could justify that for like Kern Call, Run Waves, Run Heart J Waves, Run Waves, ew, Run Waves, yuck. But it feels kind of like an academic exercise, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But I do believe that Temperance plus Plenary makes sense, and so we're going to be kind of reductive here and say that we're going to get 480 from the Lily, which is a spell, and then we're going to get 200 added onto that, which is going to give you roughly 680 healing per single White Mage Lily. And so in a theoretical world, that would become a new total of White Mage being 3,640, and then Astro at 2,420. And truly, I do want to say this is a good showcase of when White Mage really does put the pedal to the metal, that White Mage really can really soar really, really high, really, really fast, and provide just boatloads of power, like in terms of raw healing with their bread and butter to healing toolkit. However, you do want to factor in that, like, Astro can pull healing, so this isn't me in any way saying Astro is a slump, but Astro is going to need to sacrifice their damage in order to get those interactions with Horoscope, for example. And so White Mage's numbers for the minimum, which is what we calculated above, minimum without any healing interactions is going to be 2,466 to the maximum of 3,640. Well, realistic, within reasonability maximum, because obviously White Mage could throw down Asylum here and then it could go even higher. But you get what I'm saying. We can expect this range for White Mage pretty comfortably, whereas Astro's a little bit more stagnant with that. And then you can dive obviously into on GCDs. This is incorrect. That should be 2,420 because Horoscope can be cast OGCD. Why do I have this note? Oh yeah, I added this note because I know that people will say in the comments, White Mage's Afflatus spells are obviously on the GCD, but they reclaim damage via Afflatus Rapture, and so when I say like things without diving into on GCDs, that is definitely skirting over the fact that yes, White Mage's Afflatus spells are on the GCD, but they reclaim the damage, and so you get what I'm saying here. So let's get into a section about misgivings and whataboutisms, because I think this is going to be me kind of thinking what the comments might say. What if a size never heals and is only used for damage? So we're talking about no healing. Okay, we subtract a size from like its minute total, 60-second total, and then we get 3,040 potency and Astro at 2,420. like we can do that calculation. What if Asylum doesn't get the chance to have its heal over time effects tick? Which is realistic, very realistic, especially with a co-healer not familiar with you, and you can't really even blame them because they've probably been bitten in the butt by PF2. This also impacts Astro, however, with Collective Unconscious and Celestial Opposition, assuming everyone even is hit by, like, CU. Basically, your minimum for White Mage goes way down. Also, I have the minimum here, if you remove the size. But minimum for White Mage goes from 1466 to a maximum of 2640, which I would say is pretty resilient. Whereas Astro just gets destroyed if their co-healer does not let their hots cook. So that sucks. And really, you can already tell from the math, this is a 720 Earthly Star with a 300 Horoscope, or 200 Horoscope. Like, that's where you're getting the 920 from. So Astro cooldowns are ready at the start of combat, and White Mage needs time to charge up their lilies, which is very true. White Mage does not start combat with a full lilies, which could be thought of as a reason to, or a way to prevent a White Mage from, like, because burst window for a raid is a few GCDs in, and so in theory the best thing a White Mage could do would be a Flatus Rapture or Solus, a Flatus Rapture or Solus, and a Flatus Rapture or Solus, go into that burst window and just crank a Blood Lily under buffs immediately. And before people say, oh, that's not realistic, it's unfortunately very realistic. If we were given those lilies, I would personally even be doing that. We're talking about the same community and the same coal that has used dissipation just for 300 potency from energy drain spams at the start of combat. So, yeah, that's probably why they don't give us lilies. However, this is a fair point. White Mage would be further behind on that. And so if we subtract it, the minimum becomes 1,266 to a maximum of 1,600. Astro obviously has more tools at their disposal immediately. And so I do want to say that I have highlighted it in red here because it could become a pain point, but 20 seconds into a fight, generally speaking, you shouldn't be suffering that much at that point. Like, I feel like this is almost a contrived problem, one where we don't usually see that point unless your co-healer is truly bad. Like, maybe others should chime in here, because I've never personally really felt too much pain here, like unless the co-healer was clearly not pre-shielding or something like that. Like, even if you don't want to use like crit low spread, like, why can't you just apply like a Eucration Prognosis or a basic Sucker Shield and at least mitigate a little bit of that? Like, it's literally free, it doesn't impact your damage, and it's probably better than like forcing a White Mage to use Medica, but like at that point, like, again, we're like making a contrived situation that I don't believe that not having all of your lilies at the start of combat is going to be the worst thing ever. I don't believe that that's the scenario. I think that that's very fringe, but you can always correct me in the comments. White Mage's Asylum is on a 90-second cooldown. White Mage's Plenary Indulgence is on a 60-second cooldown. Therefore, doesn't Astro have a higher cadence or opportunity to provide small bursts of healing? Keep in mind, Astro also has Horoscope, which is totally free, on a 60-second cooldown. So, where White Mage would need to commit at least one lily to get 200 healing from Plenary Indulgence. So, I do believe that this has some merit, because while yes, a size is 40-second cooldown, but it's mostly a DPS cooldown popped on the cooldown as soon as it's off cooldown. But realistically, if White Mage blows their load all over the floor every 20 seconds, they can only get a basic lily, which is going to be a 400 potency heal. So, if you considered each of the three primary bread and butter AST cooldowns, Earthly Star, Collective Unconscious, and then Celestial Opposition, a 20-second cadence lily is not going to heal more than them. Like, those are going to objectively heal more, and we're again ignoring other issues like HOTS not being allowed to tick. Is everyone going to stand in the Collective Unconscious? But so could, however, be easily argued that when we did look at that 60-second burst aggregate, that it was a little idyllic, being like, hey, yeah, White Mage, if they stuff all the lilies into the 10-second Plenary Indulgence window, of course it can heal crazy. And so that is a true statement, and I don't believe that that's contrived, because are you going to use all 3 lilies in the PI window? Well, I freaking hope not. Probably not. 1 or 2, sure, but 3? How many scenarios are you going to do that? Not many. But given that Earthly Star and all of these other abilities could be staggered and used for different instances of damage along that 60 seconds, I do believe that there is justification in this whataboutism. So, let's see. What do I say here specifically? Yeah, so like while Collective Unconscious does have 200 upfront, and then you can expect 400 potency over that, that will take like 4 to 6 seconds after that cast to guarantee that you're going to exceed the value of the lily, of 1 lily. And then like it takes 7 to 9 seconds after casting to heal more than a Flatus Rapture. Therefore, it needs to be asked, in which situation would it be critical for this amount of healing? Like, we're diving into really the mechanics of, like, during a 60-second window, what could happen here. Actually, I do add another point here. Notice how that I didn't even bring up Collective Unconscious that requires 13 to 15 seconds. So, while, yes, it lasts 18 seconds, that is a very long amount of time in a fight, especially if we're going to be picking apart a 60-second window like this. So it requires 13 to 15 seconds in order to heal more than 1 Flatus Rapture. Plain 400 potency of Flatus Rapture here. So Celestial Unconscious needs, or Collective Unconscious needs 5 ticks, not all 5. It has 6 ticks. So it will need 5 ticks at 13 to 15 seconds to outdo 1 of Flatus Rapture. So, in a situation where you do need another lily, which comes back every 20 seconds, you will need to wait a solid portion of the 20 seconds until the next lily would already come up for a White Mage in order for the Astro's heal over time effects to heal more. Like, how to phrase that in a different way, because I feel like I might lose people with that. It'll take 15 seconds for this Collective Unconscious ability to heal more than 1 Flatus Rapture. We are looking at 1 Flatus Rapture, 1 Lily, being reclaimed every 20 seconds. So is that window, that 5-second window between, or you could argue 13, okay, if the server ticks are on your side, my friend, then it could be 7 seconds. During that 7-second period where you're waiting for that next burst of healing, that next lily to burst heal, is that going to make the difference between you healing the party and successfully making the heal check or wiping the party? I think it would be very, very situation dependent. But to continue here, Earthly Star, ooh, my tooltip just went away. Where did it go? Whatever. But Earthly Star, I think, would be a bigger contender for the reasons to be concerned, because Earthly Star spikes to 720 healing if you let it cook, and you should always let it cook. And so that is going to be just 80 potency under 2 default Flatus Rapture cast. So Earthly Star is really, 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 really good, which I shouldn't need to be said to anyone who's played AST. It's really great. So the situation where this becomes really important is with White Mage. Actually, this is a full scenario. I should have probably marked that better. But we're playing a scenario out here. So we need a big burst of healing. Plenary Indulgence plus 1 Lily, 600 healing. Astro will cook the Earthly Star, 720 healing. Okay, Astro healed a bit more. Whether that's overheal or not really depends on the situation. But we're going to say Astro healed more. So, oh no. We need more healing, but we have 10 seconds to wait before that healing. Well, Plenary Indulgence has just fallen off, and so the basic Lily is going to be 400 potency of healing. Collective Unconscious, we could say, is going to be that 200, or Celestial Opposition, my apologies, is going to be 200 plus 3 ticks is going to be 500 healing potency, so that's 200 plus 7 to 9 seconds to get those 3 ticks. Okay, well, Astro broke ahead. Astro was already ahead, Astro broke ahead. Oh no, let's say we need even more healing. Well, basic Lily would be 400 potency, and then Celestial or Collective Unconscious, my apologies, is going to be 500 potency, plus that remaining 200, because remember, we got more ticks left of Celestial Opposition. We're going to have the Astro really come out ahead. And so that's really important to state here, is that yes, in scenarios where you cannot ramp up your Lily and you are not interacting with the Lily kit and the baseline kit of the White Mage, Astro will be pulling ahead. But we already had a good insight into that if we scroll up here and we look at some of these basic numbers. We already had that. So is this whataboutism a bad whataboutism? No, because I do believe that it's a very valid point. And so, yeah. Oh yeah, and we're not even including Lady of Crowns here. And so every 2 minutes, they'll go to that section, and then they will have that. And so I would say that Astro, in this particular scenario, would win out. But I also don't feel that it would win out that much, and so that's why I'm kind of like, eh. And now we are going to be talking very lightly about Collective Unconscious and the Narnia problem. And I say this because I'm being kind of brutal on White Mage, and I'm also wanting to be fair to Astro, and a little brutal here too, because I've been bitten by this in Party Finder, where it's like we are using Collective Unconscious, and it's a great ability. It has a mitigation that hits the entire party 30 yards range, and then we have that heal over time, which is going to be only 8. And my problem children are so highlighted here. You can get chitin back when you start using feint and go into my melee range. Why is the samurai not in melee range in these BF groups? Guys? Why? Why is it always you? But I have my problem children in Narnia, and so whenever I like talk about like Collective Unconscious as being a like really great heal, which it is, I'm also like, So yeah, as I say, they love Narnia. And so remember that White Mage has Asylum, and then White Mage also has Divine Caress as their 2 problematic abilities to hit Narnia lovers. But that is double. Well, it's not 16, it's not exactly. It's basically double the range of 8 yards. So, White Mage's 2 problem abilities are still dramatically easier to hit than Astro's. And remember, like, with the size of pizza, like, the difference between a, like, 8-inch size pizza... It's really small, versus a 15-inch size of pizza. That is a lot more area to eat. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. Like, this is significantly easier to get people in. And so, another whataboutism is idiot proofing. And I am not going to apologize for this, because this hits me so often. And so, I'm just going to read it out. Know what's nice? Not needing to worry about your co-healer, not letting your heal over times tick, not needing to worry about Narnia. There's something very powerful in the complete simplicity of I press button and bar go up, and this is a clear signal to your co-healer. AST's Collective Unconscious, even if people are in it, you need to let that hawk cook the party. AST's Earthly Star, I sometimes don't place it in the exact proper second to have it immediately burst the heal, like party's health up after an AoE, like Honeybee Lovely, like she'll do like her like stage set or whatever, and it's just like, sorry, it needs like 3 more seconds to cook. Oh fuck, my co-healer just popped Fizzes and Whispering Dawn and Ixochol and Holos and Panheima as my star was cooking for 3 more seconds. Damn it, let it cook. AST's Collective Unconscious, let it cook the party. It sucks that I even need to say this, but I've encountered this so much. Let it cook. Damn it. The party is like the berry healer's throwing everything, and they're like, stop chatting me. Stop chatting me. I just applied Eucratian Prognosis and popped Fizzes. Stop chatting me. And I'm like, let the Asylum work, bruh. Please. Or like any of the heals. You're not being chatted. There's just no damage coming in for the next 30 seconds. Please. Jeez. Let it cook. Damn it. Sorry, I'm personally attacked by this. I'm like, damn it. You're not being chatted at all. Just let it cook. But Insane Asylum, let the damn hot tick. I do want to say with White Mage, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why. But with White Mage's visuals, it is so much more in your face. It's like, there is a giant, glistening, white, shimmery, shiny dome in your fucking eyeballs. Please let it heal. I've had less of a problem with people doing that. Like, it's like this barrier that Asylum produces over the party is like a much better indicator about like, hey, maybe just let it heal the party. This is here. Whereas it's like with like the Astro abilities, they're very shiny. Like Celestial Opposition, holy fuck, like a little bit of flashbang to the party. Good lord, and that's not even getting into Sunside. That's another flashbang to the party. It's kind of like a mini Red Mage LP, but those for some reason, Astro heal over times usually are ignored more than White Mage's Asylum, like by a lot, and it's kind of like, oh god. So I do want to say that that's kind of frustrating. And there's another things like, what about ass size? It's like a size comes up every 40 seconds, which is really quite often. Like, you should be using it off cooldown, and it can help with residual damage. Is it going to be like game breaking? It's 400 potency. No, it's not going to be game breaking, but still, that's like, it's like a Cure 1, kind of. It's like one tick of your Lily Bell. I think they did buff Cure 1 to be a little higher, but you still shouldn't be casting Cure 1. Free Cure's a trap. As is aspected benefit. Oh god, it's a trap. But I digress. But like, I do want to say this kind of ends this section on like all these whataboutisms. I think that the point is like, outside of incredibly fringe scenarios, White Mage's AoE healing is not drastically behind Astro's in any capacity. Now, what I will say here is that there's a problem with all this that I have skirted until now, where I'm bringing it right up to everyone's attention, is Party Finder exists, DSR exists, and I have had many people that I've talked to that did Sage and White Mage DSR before the Holos change, and I've been told the stories. Red hot flashing lights and signs that I can't in good faith say that yes, while White Mage's healing numbers are good, that I can talk about collective unconscious and not say that White Mage drastically is lacking in having a 60-second 10% mitigation for the party. It sounds trivial, but the only HP that truly matters is the last one, and you can overheal all you want. If your barrier healer has not provided a barrier, has not provided mitigations, and it will hit for 1 HP higher than your ranged DPS's health, those ranged DPS are going down, and there is not a damn thing that you can do on White Mage if you don't have Temperance up, which would lead into Divine Caress, because Divine Caress is a barrier, but it's tied to your mitigation, so those are wedged into a 2-minute cooldown, and Astro, meanwhile, has Collective Unconscious as a different... It's on its own beat, it's on its own drum, it's on its own 60-second cooldown, and can be separate from neutral Sect. This is such a pain in the ass, and I know I brought it up earlier, but I would literally take Asylum and trade it in for Collective Unconscious immediately. In spite of how good Asylum is, how much I use it, I would trade it in for Collective Unconscious, and I would call that a White Mage buff. And I'm not going to apologize for it. That is absolutely a huge point of failure in the White Mage's kit. Now we're going to be talking about Cure 3, the Prom Child, and you're going to see a lot of tooltips here that, how to say it elegantly. They're relevant to the discussion, and they're just there for your reference. Medica is obviously here. 400 potency, 600 potency. So Cure 3 is 50% better than Medica in terms of healing. 400 times 0.5 is 200. Add that, or times 1.5 is 600. Obviously the MP cost is just a touch above 50%, but realistically, are you really going to be that upset about 100 MP disparity? Well, you're saving a GCD potentially if Cure 3 can resolve things. I think that, and this is my honest feeling, I feel that this ability is both comically overestimated in how much healing it does, because it does 50% more than a Medica, which is not going to be game changing. But at the same point of time, if it's going to be useful, why are you not using it? And that people are way too worried about that MP cost, like 50% more healing for roughly 50% more MP cost. Is it a bulk bargain deal? No, but at the same point in time, you are saving a GCD potentially if useful. And yes, that is a pretty big if. So I do want to say that rule number 1, and I will make this red, maybe not that color of red, you do not want to cast any more on GCD heals than necessary. And like, unless obviously it recoups damage like a Flatus Misery. I feel like I beat that point into the ground at this point. But Medica healing potency is going to be 1125. Trick is, with any heal over time, as we've discussed, we need to let it cook, and your co-healing needs to let it cook. And we nearly double the efficacy of Cure 3 with 1 Medica 3. So, trick is, can you wait 15 seconds? That's really what it boils down to. Can you wait for this to tick a few times to outdo Cure 3? And will this heal up the party before 15 seconds? That's really what you're asking. And a lot of the time, most of the time, yes is your answer. Yes, Medica 3 will outperform Cure 3, because you will have the time to wait. And so, I do have a note here. When should I use Cure 3? Same time you'd use Helios on Astro, when you're out of your bread and butter AoE tools that we've slammed into the dirt and back above, or earlier in the video, and you don't have the time before the next burst of damage. Otherwise, Medica 3, if you have the time. Otherwise, use the tools if you can use them. Like, don't cast on GCDs. Like, and I do say here, which can feel a bit contrived, how many scenarios are there like that? Where are you going to be out of your tools and need that burst of healing? They do exist, and I do think Cure 3 does have a place, I should say that, but I don't feel that it drastically tips the scales in White Mage's favor, and I'd call it a great nice to have, and I'll go into a bit of it here. So, is Cure 3 White Mage's answer to the successive burst neutral sect can provide? Because we just talked about that in the neutral sect section, about how we can keep applying those big barriers and offset successive damage. And no is the answer. At least that is my opinion, no. I know people don't want me to fence it, and yeah, my answer is no, and there's no nice way of saying it. So, could Cure 3 be proven to be more healing? Yes. But the thing is that Neutral Sect is splitting its GCD contribution between heal and a barrier. And so some math here is that Neutral Sect Helios, 480 potency heal. Not bad, but again, you're not using Neutral Sect, you're using the magic potency plus 20%, like, whatever. That's good, but you get no barrier. Like, this is not why you're using Neutral Sect to spam Helios. You're not, like, that would be, if you need to, sure, but that you're missing the point of using the skill. Like, But now if you get into Neutral Sect with aspected Helios, or Helios conjunction, now you're getting that heal, which gets that boost. Okay, sweet. But you're also getting that big, juicy, glorious barrier, which stacks with the Sage Scholar barriers. And then you're also getting that heal over time, which is also getting that amplification, you can see from the calc here. And then you're getting that heal over time. And so total healing plus barrier is going to be, oh yeah, and total healing between that heal and this heal is going to be 1,350 because you amp it. And then you get that barrier. And so from one GCD, if you let the hot cook, is going to be 1,700 potency from one GCD. And that's really good, because while some of that does have a good potential of overhealing, you're also getting that barrier, which, like we said before, your ranged DPS are probably going to have a much higher likelihood of surviving with that. So, Tier 3 under Temperance, 1.2 multiplier, we see is 720. So, with the maths in front of us, let's unpack a few things. Helios Conjunction applies the heal over time and has that rolling. That's huge value, obviously, as we just calculated. Helios Conjunctions, barrier, do not stack. Clearly. Otherwise, we would stack them to high heaven. Helios Conjunctions heal over time. Clearly don't stack. Only refresh the timer. Helios Conjunction, therefore, is only maximally effective. One cast per AoE, which depletes the barrier like, the AoE will break the barrier, and at that point, assumedly, hot duration will have some of the ticks ran through. So each AoE, there's a justification for a Helios conjunction cast, is what I'm trying to say here. And that maybe it's not the best thing to spam, and in which case you default to Helios, which is very meh. And then I do want to say, yeah, that's what I'd say in the next therefore statement. So Helios is like your fallback after. So it would be like, in say 5 AoEs, Helios conjunction AoE, Helios conjunction Helios AoE hits the party. Helios conjunction Helios AoE hits the party. You get what I'm getting at here. So White Mage out of Divine Caress has no AoE barriers, you aren't able to pad the HP above thresholds, and are at the mercy of Temperance 10% mitigation, which Astro Sun Sign is roughly the exact same. What's 5 seconds less duration is basically the exact same. Cure 3, however, is astoundingly more powerful direct burst of healing than anything that Astro can provide. Like 720 is clearly higher than 480, like significantly so. And it's significantly so higher than Helios Conjunction. There's no question Cure 3 can outdo it. No question whatsoever. However, I do want to say Overheal is a thing and is worthless. This is a controversial statement. It better not be. Comments will find a way. But Cure 3, while it is almighty powerful, that's a huge burst of healing. Especially in the context of that situation. In terms of raw HPS throughput, anything above max HP is useless. And so let's not ignore the large amount of HP from this from neutral sect, Helios conjunction, heal over time. So that's 1050 healing just from the heal over time. Let's not ignore that. That is a lot of healing. And so White Mage will need to cast Medica 3 to get that hot rolling. And even if you did, in an ideal situation, want to like use more Cure 3s to make up for it, you still would want that heal over time rolling, because that will add up to more healing. Just that heal over time will add up over time to more than your Cure 3. Just the heal over time. So in burst scenarios, White Mage you could see going Medica 3 into Cure 3, potentially, and only refreshing M3, Medica 3's heal over time, specifically when it's running out. And I do want to note here that I also don't feel the MP cost burden of White Mage's Cure 3 is that bad. Again, like, you're getting roughly 50% higher MP cost for 50% more healing, but Thin Air is also a thing, and it's really... Thin Air... With Thin Air, I find it very hard to find Cure 3 that hard to justify, given everything that we've talked about. And so I will say that we're in the position where Cure 3 is a viable option for pure HPS raw throughput healing, and definitely does more than Astro there. However, Astro has significantly larger capacity to make up for bad barrier healer healing at that point. Or like, even, like, if, like, Honeybee Lovely has, like, 4 stacks, your squishies, if Run Heart isn't mitigated even better than should be expected, because respectfully at 4+ stacks, the barrier healer is being really pushed. Like, that's not very nice. White Mage really is kind of helpless there. Like, that sounds horrible, but it's true. You're really at the mercy of your bad barrier healer. And Astro, I do say ahem here, because like, it's really true. Astro's neutral sect only lasts 20 seconds, and collective unconscious mitigation only really hits 1 AoE. Like, it's way too short of a duration. But it is something more. Like, Astro does at least have something, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. Astro does have at least these options to buffer it out and help. But with Astro... I don't want to duplicate that argument, like I even say it here, and I really don't, but it's worth noting that Cure 3 does provide more burst healing, and it does outpace the HPS, that's true. However, no doubt, like, all of that overhealing, especially when we factor in Divine Caress's 1000 potency over time, heal over time effect, which I should say, Divine Caress's heal over time effect does stack. Like, you can even see it in the screenshot. you can see that they stack, and that's a huge whackload of healing. Like, we're talking about over 20,000 ticks, and this isn't even a crit. Like, I don't think it's a crit. I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure that that's just normal variance. 90% sure, but someone might need to check me on that, but I'm pretty sure it is. So that's a lot of healing. But the really big thing is that healing isn't useful. And that really kind of begs the question about, like, what would you even need that much healing for? Sorry, let me scroll up and keep that image there. So Divine Caress is 1,000 healing, and then you see Medica 3, I do a little bit of math here, that's 1,050. And so what's this one? Oh yeah, we're just calculating individual ticks here of the Medica Hot under the 1.2 amplification of Temperance. So realistically, we're getting 410 potency per hot tick here. That's what potency those hot ticks are there, with both M3 and Divine Caress. And that is going to be 2050 potency of healing over 15 seconds, which obviously if you throw an Asylum into the mix, it becomes even more ridiculous. And if we pull up Lilybell numbers, because we're looking at 2000 potency here, Lilybell, we already calculated earlier in the video, is going to be roughly 80% of your max HP just from these hots, stripping out all else. And so we could go further into more contrived examples about what if AST used Collective Unconscious, Celestial Opposition, and Horoscope? Yes, and what if White Mage uses Plenary Indulgence, Asylum, and all these other things, which, remember, Asylum is in healing action 1.1 times multiplier. So we could truly go crazy here, but let's not go too wild in a discussion about Temperance plus Cure 3 versus Aspect of Helios and Helios under neutral sect. Like that in of itself is more than enough to look, I believe, fairly at this. And then raising Divine Caress here, which would be something from Temperance, because Divine Caress is paired with Temperance, and there is no reason why you would not press Divine Caress, even if you didn't need the shield, just for that extra healing. Like, it's free. So this leaves us in the interesting position where White Mage's kit can provide a nauseating, tremendously huge, overwhelming wave of healing. But if you are paired with a weaker barrier healer, you're kind of out to lunch. Like I keep saying, and I cannot stress it enough because I'm about to propose a pretty wild White Mage change, or a few at the end of this video. You can heal as much as you want to 100% HP. All the rest of that is useless overhealing. No one cares about it, and if raid-wide damage is above 100% HP, it doesn't matter. If your barrier healer hasn't mitigated that, on a White Mage you're utterly helpless, and that does not feel great, especially when you look at something like Astro with neutral sect. And so my conclusion about Cure 3, before I talk about what I propose, or one of my proposals, is that Cure 3, I do believe, is a solid addition to White Mage's kit. I genuinely do. I honestly, earnestly do. But I don't feel that it's such a great addition that Astro feels profoundly deficient or hurting in any capacity. And I don't think that's unfair to say. I do think it's a healthy addition to the game, but it's not making me regret playing AST. Now, what I'm going to propose may sound radical for Temperance. This is going to be a buff to Temperance, but I do believe, given all of the framework that we just established and math that we checked into, that there should be a buff to Temperance, something to the effect of all excess healing done by the White Mage that casts Temperance will form a barrier on party members up to a maximum of 10% of their max health. I'm saying this because clearly we identified Cure 3 is very unique to White Mage and can potentially overheal a lot. In fact, Temperance, with Divine Caress and everything else going on, you're likely going to overheal a whole lot. We've also identified that White Mage's ability to deal with successive raid wides is a lot weaker, and so I don't think it's unfair to ask for this to be added to Temperance, and I do think that this would be a very healthy buff for White Mage in order to help things. 10% is again not wild. I don't believe that it's outlandish, and I do believe that it would still fall reasonably within the category of being weaker than Astro's neutral sect barriers, because I do believe there should be a reward for on GCD barriers. So if we go way up and we go to Horoscope Healing, Horoscope Healing was 200 potency. And was it a little bit higher? No. So Horoscope, yeah, here was our Horoscope. So we saw, or Macrocosmos is where I did the math. So 200 potency of healing was equal to roughly 8% of max HP. So we calculated that neutral sect will give barriers at about 600 potency. And so that is incredibly, sorry, I lost myself in the sheet, but that barrier is significantly more powerful. So 10% is a little over 200 potency of healing, and that would be like just converting overhealing into this up to a little over 200 potency barrier. I don't believe that that is wild. I don't believe that that is going to break the game, and I don't believe that that is going to make Astro's neutral sect suddenly just feel completely and utterly deficient. However, what it is going to do is it's going to give White Mage a little bit more agency and convert all of that worthless overhealing into something that the White Mage can actually really benefit from, in my opinion, in these scenarios where Temperance falls behind neutral sect so profoundly. And so now we're going to get to the summary about AST versus White Mage AoE healing more cohesively. White Mage and Astro are both incredibly capable of providing a lot of healing. I hope that that is profoundly obvious to everyone. However, White Mage is leaning more into direct in-your-face healing, and I believe that that in-your-face has value. I believe how in-your-face it is has a lot of value. I also do believe that White Mage's Temperance could use a buff, just mentioned, to bring the parity between neutral sect and Temperance a bit more in line, especially for the fact that it can be the Wild West with who your co-healer is. I don't feel that that is unreasonable. However, I do not want to fence it, and I do believe that just based on everything that we unpacked, hey, White Mage, I do believe, has a better raw healing kit. It's like, I say these lines here, hey, not so nice word, let my earthly star cook literally 3 seconds longer. Why does no one come within 8 yards of me for collective unconscious for the heal over time? Why does my co-healer not let my hots that I apply tick? There is definitely a beauty to White Mage's, like, just brutal in-your-face efficacy of just, blah, here's numbers. It is very in your face, there's no question about it, and it's like, if like the healer is using Exicol or Indom or whatever, after you've done that, or like, God forbid, you creation prognosis Pepsis, for how many times I've seen that ability go off, because I do play with animations and so I see it and I'm like, what? But there's something great about this in your face stuff. And the problem, though, and I do put it in red, is why I was talking about collective unconscious. Collective Unconscious, while yes, its little dinky range for its heal, I do feel could be buffed to 15Y and be pretty good. I don't see why not. Why does it need to be 8? Please make it 15. Like, I think that that's an Astro buff video, even though this isn't necessarily like a buff Astro video or that Astro is deficient, but I think that it would be fair. Like, call me crazy, I think it'd be fair. But Collective Unconscious, that mitigation component is definitely so incredibly important, and it is a very bad sore spot for White Mage. Like, it's not okay, in my opinion, for White Mage to be so deficient here. And so what I'm going to say, and obviously I have more explanation on the sheet, you can pause the video obviously at any point to read what I've written, but I do believe, in addition to the Temperance buff, that I recommend, just to rehash in case people skipped, my recommendation for Temperance is that we convert White Mage's personal overheal into maximum 10% of each party member's HP. Only during Temperance, and let's say that it has a duration of, heck, you could even say like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, like you don't need to make it a 30-second duration berry, like make it very pertinent in that moment. The collective unconscious thing, the scholar in me leaps out and wants to just tie on the 10% mitigation of collective unconscious onto Asylum. However, there's another 60-second ability in the White Mage's kit that I do believe would be very appropriate to attach a 10% damage mitigation component too. Or if we want to be flavorful, sure, I guess you could put it as a AoE barrier. But it would be 60-second Plenary Indulgence. I do believe that that would be a fair location for that, because it falls in that same 60-second parity, and I think that that would be really, really, really nice to have there. Just something to make it a little bit more balanced. Now let's talk about single target healing, and we've already established a few things. Aquaveil is Exaltation, Divine Benison is Celestial Intersection, Essential Dignity is roughly Tetragrammaton and Benny. Like, obviously, White Mage, Benny is more bursty, but it has a 180 second thing, which is a trade-off. White Mage, also remember, has their Tetragrammaton 2 charges come back every 60 seconds. Astro has it come back every 40 seconds. So I do believe Astro wins out already just on that. Let's actually scroll up to show those tooltips, because I know people are going to be like, wait, what? So Tetragrammaton, 60 second cooldown. Essential Dignity, 40 second. Benediction, 180 second. I posit that White Mage is already deficient in single target healing, because Tetragrammaton has a longer cooldown than Essential Dignity by 50%. So even though White Mage gets a Benediction, it's on such a long cooldown timer that I do believe that Astro gets a lot more mileage here. So I already feel that White Mage is kind of falling behind on Astro here. So if we look at single target healing outside of the baseline kits, there's a huge deficiency here. But I do want to talk about this because a lot of people might not have done the current Savage tier, which I understand, especially if they're like doing it in a static that really knows what they're doing. They probably won't understand why this is something I'm even bringing up here. So I guess we've already established White Mage is about to get hammered into the dirt by Astro here. But in this tier in Savage, I can tell you from personal experience that tanks are getting hit hard, and this actually does matter. Like M4S, the arena splits on the sides, and then you have like Chain Lightning with like all those swords and stuff. And the main tank, especially if they aren't using proper mitigations, thanks Party Finder, like the tank is just getting obliterated. The tank is taking it like a femboy at a con, like screaming and hollering at the top of their lungs, like you can hear across the damn bloody hotel. The tank just is getting plowed into oblivion. Like you want to talk about like some of that stuff, like full strap on and all that stuff. Like the tank is getting destroyed by Wicked Thunder. Like I've seen tanks not mitigate there, and I have thrown everything into them, and they've still died. So I think that this is relevant here. Mouser is also very annoying, although it's a lot less intense, I found. Or maybe the tanks are mitigating more. I've literally lost tanks during that, and then it just cascaded. Ugh, gross. But White Mage's kit, to more prudently get to the point and make less jokes, is White Mage's get Afflatus Solus, which is a Lily ability, and then Astro gets Arrow, Spire, Bowl, Ewe, or Synastry. So, how to say it in the nicest way possible, these cards, these 4 cards, I'm with you, because there's a lot of people watching this video that's just like, I usually don't use those cards. I'm with you. I don't either. I'm with you. But during those situations where the tank is going to be obliterated, 15-second bowl. Like, look at this card. 10% damage reduction on the tank for 15 seconds. I'm not going to sneeze at that. The Spire, okay, you know what? We already have an ability called Celestial Intersection. It also has the interesting effect where the Spire and Celestial Intersection, they stack to provide an even bigger barrier. Again, that's nice. The Arrow, mileage will vary on the tank. It can sometimes be really good with a warrior. It can sometimes be good. It's all right. It's not the worst thing. And then the Ewer is clearly a nice OGCD heal over time. Like, I can tell you that like the ability for an Astro to sustain a tank through a dungeon is drastically better in Dawn Trail thanks to these cards. And then obviously we have Synastry. There's the tooltip. So obviously with Synastry, this is basically just a 40% heal amp on the target, or in tank cleave healing, which I hope becomes a thing. Like, I think that would be a really cool thing to have. And yeah, I did vomit in my mouth putting Synastry here because it's so fringe, which I don't think it should be fringe. I think that, like, if the arena splits in two with M4S, like, both tanks should be getting smashed up. Like, she even has, like, multiple swords. Like, give me a reason to want this ability, because this is a cool effect. This is powerful, but it's also really fringe. I should say Synastry is not a hot. You can see if I look at my Chocobo, Roar, Not a Dragon, Benefit 2 has 40% of its healing turn there. That's a good chunky heal. That's a nice little perk, and it lasts for a good amount of time. It does apply even if you're applying your heal over time effect here, even though it's kind of hard to see these numbers. You can clearly see aspected benefits applied. The heal over time from aspected benefit is at 12.8 thousand, and then you can see an extra 5,000 healing just from Synastry. It's not a bad ability. It's criminally underused because use cases of it are so small, but it's not a bad ability. In fact, I should probably be using it more. It's even on a good keybind. But we're talking more about White Mage versus Astro here. Not the efficacy of Synastry. I should calm myself down. But Afflatus Solus is... it's not enough. So I'm going to make a few notes. Yes, in most content, tanks don't not need to be babied at all and can be ignored, especially Warrior. Especially Warrior. Maybe less so Dark Knight. Sorry, Dark Knights. I love you. I have no issue healing you, but you need a little bit more love at times. But, and in most cases, Aquaveil, Celestial Intersection, Benediction, Erectile Dysfunction are more than enough to maintain the tank. That's the truth. However, even myself playing AST, and I did admit it early on, as soon as those cards appeared, I myself very often throw away those cards. They're just like Rattata Pokemon cards. It's just like, girl, who wants to be a fucking Rattata? But like, then we have Synastry. It's fringe, and casts of Cure 2 and Benefit 2 are rare. Don't use Cure 1 or Benefit 1. And then Regen Spell is rarely cast 2, but you see it cast a lot more than like Synastry. So and there's like minor difference between them, like it's so irrelevant, they're like the same thing. But like clearly 1,500 potency regens is way higher cost to benefit ratio, because if you're going to spend a GCD, you really want that GCD to go as far as you can. Obviously regens are going to be a lot better in general. So let's talk about like content examples. Like if we have a tank buster, we need to ask, isn't Aquaveil plus Celestial Intersection enough? What about if the tank is eating lots of autos for an extended period of time? Well, isn't Exaltation and Divine Benison enough? Well, not in Savage. I've learned that the hard way, or rather the tank that died did. But however, this tier, tanks are getting smashed. Right in front of my salad? Damn. Fanboy gone wild at con. But I myself personally absolutely found that my AST cards are going to great use during these periods. I'm telling you that God honest truth, I found them going to really good use. However, this kind of begs the question about like, isn't Exaltation and 3 charges of Erectile Dysfunction, 2 charges of Celestial Opposition enough? And the answer is no, not really. Like, I will take that 1,000 extra potency, like, EU card, and then the additional 15 seconds of mitigation from the bowl. Like, I'm not going to turn my nose up at something as powerful as these cards and say, oh yeah, you know what, I'm just not going to play the bowl because even though I could weave it in, even though it's here, even though it's free, I'm just not. Who the hell is gonna say that? Like unless, and obviously, like, this is also considering that there's a justification for it. Like, if the tank is eating shit, this is free, I will have a weave window for it, why not? And that's kind of what I'm getting at here. So, just to reel back to the point, White Mage doesn't have those card options. The White Mage doesn't have the bowl. The White Mage doesn't have the ear. The only option that the White Mage has is Afflatus Solus, which obviously feeds into the Afflatus Misery system. So the problem that starts to really arise is White Mage gets 1 lily back every 20 seconds, and that the White Mage is now in the position where they need to choose Afflatus Solus or Afflatus Rapture. Astro does not need to make the choice if they use these cards. These cards are always in their Astro flow system. Like, the Astro is not choosing, do I want to use Earthly Star or the Bowl? In which case you'd always choose Earthly Star, obviously. Like, obviously. But the main thing is, like, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves there scrolling. But the thing is, White Mage does need to make that choice, and I do believe that that sucks. It's rare that we're pushed to that position, but when we are, which again, we're getting an ultimate soon, and we don't know the difficulty, we don't know the mechanics in it, I need to take this into account, and I need to say, White Mage falls behind here, because it does, because the White Mage now needs to make a choice. And so that kind of sucks. And as well as, don't forget, and we'll talk about this later, White Mage also has their mobility tied to these abilities. That is incredibly critical to take into account here. And so from there, I'm going to say, as a counterpoint, 90% of the time, Astro weaving in the cards on top of the baseline single target kit really feels like it's jamming in too many OGCDs at times, depending on the situation. Like, is it the best idea to clip Malefic and get both Exaltation and the Bowl on the tank, even if the tank's not going to die directly to damage? And we're also forgetting Celestial Intersection, and we're also forgetting the Ewer, which the Ewer could be cast later. Remember that, because it's heal over time. So, oh yeah, and then I do mention, are we not going to apply Celestial Intersection before the damage comes in? Like, you are not going to be triple weaving in between a Malefic, and I would be alarmed if you said, I'm going to use Lightspeed just for this one tank buster that the tank is going to survive anyhow. And so, counterpoint to the counterpoint. And unfortunately, I do believe that these are worth looking into, because I don't think that this is totally contrived. Not this one. Like I've said, there's been lots that I've thought are contrived, not this though. In most instances of tank being mashed by auto attacks in this tier, I'm able to stagger and single weave and slowly trickle resources into them. Malefic, Bowl, Malefic, Exaltation, Malefic, Celestial Intersection, Malefic, Ewer, because that's the heal over time effect, we don't need it immediately. Malefic, Celestial Intersection, hey, because these are auto attacks and we're presuming that we have more time to do that. Malefic, Essential Dignity, Malefic, Essential Dignity, and then sure, we could even have a third Malefic Essential Dignity. While that may seem contrived, you underestimate my Party Finder tanks and my co-healers. Sages, use these buttons. Damn it. I don't see this used. I don't see this used. I don't see any of these used sometimes. And I'm like, girl, what the fudge? So, where does this leave us for single target healing? White Mage is deficient. It's quite simple. Astro doesn't need to choose between, I can pump my tanks full of, my cooldowns, and I don't need to choose between that or my AoE healing. I can pump the tanks full of my stuff, and I can also pump the party full of my stuff. Yay! White Mage has to make that choice. That sucks. And, like, at this point with the lilies, a theme is starting to appear. Like, now, through this entire video, you're starting to see this, like, big theme appear. If my barrier healer isn't helping support enough, Astro is feeling better. Is one of those themes, but there's a few. But, like, White Mage, again, is arriving at being deficient. Where, yes, a White Mage would ideally use and save their lilies for the AoE, because obviously they get a lot more from that, and they wouldn't need to choose if their Sage used these damn buttons. So, that's one of the themes coming up. And then another thing is, like, well, is Benediction enough to make up this gap between Astro and White Mage? Isn't Benediction the best single target heal? And we are so far flung from the days where Dark Knight literally died from Living Dead, and Benediction could be the perfect answer from that. Warrior still has Home Gang, would be the counterpoint. And Astro has Essential Dignity. And that has worked just fine, because I've done many an M4 groups where Warrior's home ganging, and I'm just popping 2 Essential Dignities. Maybe I'll be cute and throw Exaltation on them and a Celestial Intersection just weaving, like, but it's not. It's not deficient. Benediction, I don't believe, is the win that you think it is. And if we're going to say Benediction is the win, I'm going to say that, hey, you know what? Essential Dignity having 2/3 the cooldown of Tetragrammaton and 1 more charge. And what is it? 180 divided by 40, the cooldown of Benediction. I'd say that Essential Dignity would win. Like, if we really had to go down that train of thought, that's what I would say. So I don't feel that White Mage is on par with Astro in single target healing at all at this point. And again, assuming that we're getting an ultimate that will be difficult, we're assuming it will be difficult. I don't think that's a bold assumption. I hope it will be difficult. I look forward to it, actually. I don't think saying, oh, well, the single target healing doesn't matter. We don't know that. I mean, if it doesn't matter and that ends up being the case, well, you know what? I'll hope that the next ultimate actually will use single target healing. So, and I think that would be something cool to see, like alongside cleave damage, like make us use things like Synastry for cleave damage. But I can say at this point, this is a big pain point for White Mage. This is something totally overlooked. Now we're going to be talking about Thin Air for White Mage, and Astro has no equivalent to Thin Air, and Astro with the rework to the Astrodyne system, well, removal rather, has far more balanced MP economy, where Astro used to just have so much MP, it was kind of comical. But White Mage, I will say, flat out wins here, but how to say, keep in mind that this is really from the perspective of res bot MP management perspective. Like, reviving people for free is very nice, especially in prog. However, that is in prog, and when you're normally raiding, it can be effective to mitigate some of the additional 600 MP cost of a Cure 3 versus like a Medica 2. Like, I know I said it during the section, but I know people probably time skip, but you're getting roughly... No, you are getting 50% of the healing of a Medica for a little bit over 50% MP cost. So... It usually can be justified for that, but Thin Air, as a perfect use case, is to mitigate that cost. So I guess the question is, outside of revives, is Thin Air a huge difference in deal? Like, is this actively making you move piety out of your gear? Whereas an Astro will need to make up piety in order to make up for this in a non-prog point. And, like, keep in mind that we also do not want to cast, in general, even if it is free, we don't want to cast on GCD heals, even if it is Cure 3 and totally free with Thin Air, we still don't want to cast that, because we're going to lose damage from that. This isn't a part of the Lily system, we can't recuperate the damage. So do we really want to do that? And then I'll also add in the question about, like, Thin Air makes White Mage the best prog healer. Does it? We haven't talked about Lightspeed yet, and I'll give it to the Astro, personally. So, Thin Air is a giant ball of question marks for me. I guess we could give it to the White Mage, but is that really a W, all things said? And I do believe that this is an area where the Astro could get their old Ewer MP recovery card back. I do like its current iteration as a 1000 heal over time. I think that that's a good addition to the kit. I do find it healthy, and that when the tank needs it, that I find it very useful. But because, like, if you're like in a solo heal situation, like in a dungeon or something like that, like, remember, we're also getting Savage Criterion soon. So I think, like, actually, maybe I should have said that during the single target healing situation. Remember that we are getting Savage Criterion soon. We're not going to have an Eos trickling heals. We're not going to have a Cardi trickling in heals. So I should have added that into the single target section. Whatever. Hopefully people will have the insight to know that. Damn it, they probably won't. I'll add it in the pinned comment. But basically for this, I think the Astro with this does have a L, and I think that the Astro could maybe get another ability which would be similar to the old Ewer, where it could give themselves, the Astro themselves, or their co-healer, a small ticking up regeneration of MP, and I think that that would be healthy. Now let's talk about Presence of Mind and Lightspeed, and I'm trying to think about how to say it nicely. Presence of Mind is a great 2-minute DPS cooldown. And it is a DPS cooldown, and it should always be aligned with the burst window, and there's almost no situation in the game that it has been presented at this point in time. Maybe Future's rewritten. The next raid, the furry raid, will totally redefine this, and we will be holding Presence of Mind. But at this point of the game, there's no reason to view Presence of Mind as anything other than a DPS cooldown, especially now that it gives you Glare 4. And Glare 4, you can't really hold on to it because stacks of Sacred Sight is 30 seconds duration. So you can't even argue that outside of the opener burst window that you could hold on to the Glare 4 stacks for Presence of Mind to potentially be used later, because I'm sorry, you're going to lose those stacks within 30 seconds. So Presence of Mind is a DPS cooldown. There's nothing justifying at this point of the game you holding on to it. Could it be used as a healing cooldown? I can get more medicas out quicker. Yes. You could, absolutely 100%, but given the current meta of the game, it is very, 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 very weird, like exceptionally so, to say that I'm going to intentionally put my Glare 4 casts outside of the damage window, and all of the extra Glare 3 casts that I'll get through Presence of Mind. It's weird. I'm just going to say it. It could be a thing. Like, if your group has so much extra damage, you could even do it for the memes, but if your group is that far ahead, are they even going to make mistakes to the point where you can justify Presence of Mind? Like, I'll be the one to say, like, if your group is that far ahead in damage, I don't think you need this as a healing cooldown. But, sorry, I beat that point into the ground. But Presence of Mind is a 2-minute damage burst cooldown. It's a similar idea to Assize. Are you really going to hold on to Assize and not use its damage? I mean, maybe you'll hold on to it for maybe like an extra second or two. You could maybe justify that as long as you're not losing one of your casts, or dare I say 3 or 4 casts total during a fight, like during a 10-minute fight or however long M4S is. Like, you don't want to lose all that cast. That's a lot of lost. So, I already talked about that. So, let's talk about Lightspeed in comparison, and I think immediately everyone realizes now it is really ridiculous to compare Presence of Mind to Lightspeed. It's redonkulous. So Lightspeed was recently reworked, giving us 2 charges. You see that? That's amazing. But also Lightspeed's charge time is now only 60 seconds. That's amazing. This is probably my favorite ability, and it is a joy to use on Astro. I have been healing, and again, people clear groups through M4S and everything. I've cleared so many people at this point through M4S. I love Lightspeed. I love this ability. It is brilliant. And I will say, is Lightspeed mandatory for every 2-minute burst window? No. But I will say it is incredibly strongly recommended, because double weaving will help you get out those cards quicker. And remember, during those burst windows, you want as much of the burst of your DPS to be in that burst window. Like, so you want to get that card onto your Pictomancer, because God knows every group has a Pictomancer. You want to get that out as quickly as you can. And just with the normal 2-minute rotation of the cards, you're going to be holding on to your melee card. You're going to be holding on to your Lord of Crowns. You're going to activate Divination. Okay, well, we need to get that onto the melee DPS. We need to activate the Lord of Crowns. And then the range DPS is going, Ayo, buddy. Ayo, asshole. Where's my card? So, I'd argue Lightspeed is necessary, because that Pictomancer, you want to ram that card up their bunghole as quickly as you can, because if you are missing their burst window, your damage is going down. Your use as an Astro, you see these beautiful damage numbers here on Astro? You see these? They are going down. So my argument is it is necessary for every 2-minute window for Lightspeed. Is it mandatory? Strictly no. Strictly no, you don't even need to hold on to your cards. You could use Umbral or Astral Draw up to 60 seconds and totally use them out of the 2-minute window. You could throw that melee card immediately and then just be like, wait, what do you mean you pop a melee card on the melee DPS and a ranged DPS at the same time during the 2-minute window? What do you mean, bruh? You out in outer space? You crazy. I've been told that. I'm like, why wouldn't you hold on to it, bro? But I think you're starting to get a good indicator that yes, Lightspeed, one of the charges is probably going to be used like a DPS cooldown. But the thing is, we get 2 charges of it, and they come back, and so how to say it? It opens up a whole lot of things. And I'm flying off of the sheet even. I'm not even looking at the sheet. But we see Ascend's cooldown here. It's normally like 8 seconds. You can see I have a little bit of spell saving. My gear set isn't perfected yet by any means. My RNG is garbage. It's always been garbage. But you can see Ascend's cast time is lowered. I would argue this makes Astro a better prog healer than White Mage. But White Mage gets thin air. White Mage gets thin air. It doesn't this make White Mage the best for prog? No. I want to get them up ASAP between mechanics, because while there supposedly are no body checks in Ba Sing Se, there absolutely are. And I can tell you that this makes a difference. Like, if you are going into Sunrise Sabbath and that your team somehow shat the bed, and that there has somehow been 2 or 3 people knocked out, you can get through Sunrise Sabbath through this. You have a lot better chance, because you'll try and get Swifts and then you'll try and ascend them ASAP, and this 3 seconds difference makes a huge impact. That's not even including the fact that it is good just as a mobility tool. Like, this is mobility on demand. You can get like 6 or more casts depending on your spell speed. It is so good. And not to mention instant cast of your heals, which could, in a theoretical situation, which I do believe is rare. I don't think it's totally contrived, because it could happen. But if you need to pull emergency heal, you can instantly get Helios Conjunction out, or normal Helios out. Like, you could pop Horoscope, normal Helios, then you get 400 potency plus 400. You could get 400 in a pinch of healing instantly, where maybe getting 2-second cast time to get Helios out would be not possible. Understood. So, totally different ability, in my opinion. Totally different ability just because of the charges and use cases. Like, you could argue Presence of Mind could be used for revive. Again, if people are dying during the burst window, like, what the hell? And you're using your own damage now to revive. Like, I just cannot view it as the same thing. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But even during a normal situation, Fall Malefic, you want to be casting that, and you don't want to lose your cast as you're doing mobility, and Lightspeed helps you with that. And so I would argue that outside of the burst window, that Aetherial Shift might have more in common with Lightspeed, just because of the mobility aspect. Because, I mean, let's be real, most of the time you're not going to be using Lightspeed for reviving. Most of the time you're not going to be using Lightspeed to cheat out a cooldown. Most of the time you are going to be using Lightspeed to move. That's the truth. That's the truth. Most of the time you're going to be using it to move. And in which case, I will say Lightspeed, hands down, is better. I didn't even highlight it in purple. Like, Lightspeed absolutely blows this other ability out of the water. Like, Aetherial Shift. Like, Aetherial Shift is good ability. It's a healthy ability. But we'll talk about that later. And so, to that point on mobility, is White Mage's mobility abilities are tied to either recasting their Dot Dia or using a Lily to move. I feel like I have that somewhere here. Yeah, Dia is 75 potency here, and that sucks to recast. Like, Scholar's Ruin 2 is 220 potency. Whereas White Mage's ability to move and not lose damage is tied to their Lily system. Again, we are going back to those stupid Lilies. And that is an incredibly bitter, hard pill to swallow. Because it's like, okay, so now your AoE healing tool is also your damage recuperation tool as you're moving, which is also your single target tool if the tank is eating excess amount of damage. And it starts to bridge a gap of why you see these disparities here between the Astro and the White Mage. Like, it starts to make a lot more sense from that point. So, how to say it? Would White Mage damage and healing numbers not go up if we made Dia have a little bit more damage? Like, slap on an extra, say, 100 potency EVA onto it? That would help. Because, like, here, Astro versus White Mage, that's quite a significant difference. Basically, I'm just going to skip ahead into the next section because I feel like I've kind of addressed those points, or will address them really nicely later. So, I'm going to do a quick functional breakdown, and I'm going to go through this real quick. Mobility. During burst window, yes. Glare 4 is instant cast. Astro, however, actually has an actual mobility tool. I do not consider Palm a mobility tool. Astro has a legit mobility tool. Hard casting Revive, as we said, you don't want to do that. Astro, it actually does really help because you have the flexibility, because it's like, how often are you reviving during a burst window? Well, hopefully not that often. And then White Mage does have Thin Air, but we already listed that as a White Mage W. But like, again, like hard cast Revive help, I will take this over Thin Air. Faster healing when moving, like, it's a DPS cooldown. Presence of Mind is a DPS cooldown. And yeah, then we have like contrived examples like, okay, well, doesn't Lightspeed allow you to have double weaving? And it does, but is that a useful comparison against a White Mage? Like, unless we want to get really into funny things, like, I as a White Mage want to have Lightspeed so that I can cast Aetherial manipulation, or what is it of? Oh my god, Aetherial manipulation, Aetherial shift. Sorry, it's so similar to the Black Mage ability, but and I want to cast SIs at the same time as Aetherial shift. Like, to me, that's silliness. I'm not gonna compare it on that point. Like, but basically, Palm is just blown out of the water, and yeah. I do have a little bit of a summary section, and if you want to pause the video and check over it, sure, that would be good. But I am going to put a little stop here. If you want to pause, here's the second half of that. Now I'm going to be talking about areas for change for White Mage, and I do want to say White Mage feels lacking compared to Astro, and I hope that this video proved that beyond any shadow of a doubt. And while no, I do not have any amazing answers. I do not know what answers the best or ideal solutions. Like, I do not have divine foresight to know, yes, I 100% am completely confident that this will bring White Mage to be an amazing healer again. Which I think White Mage is a fine healer, but it is falling behind AST. But here are some of my ideas. First thing is Temperance. It's sad that I need to have such a disclaimer, because people will be like, you pretentious son of a, how dare you recommend buffs, you little. So that's why I have to do that disclaimer. But Temperance now is going to get additional functionality to convert overhealing into overshields up to 10% of the target's max HP. Especially with Divine Caress, especially with Cure 3, the amount of overhealing a White Mage can do during this point of a fight is nauseating. But does that help the party live? No, it doesn't. Whereas Astral's neutral sect provides shields and will allow further heavy spike damage to be buffered in succession. Now, I don't want to totally say everything that I already said in the section of neutral sect versus temperance. Neutral sect's barriers, 600 potency, 10% of max HP would be roughly 200 potency, because we did a little bit of calculations earlier in the video, earlier in the spreadsheet, where Macrocosmos, baseline 200 heal, is roughly 8% of HP. So if it was 10%, it would still be a little over 200 potency of healing, but still significantly under the 600 potency that Astro could get. So Neutral Sect, which is an on-GCD cast, would still be much stronger than what what White Mage's Overheal Barrier Temperance could do. But this gives White Mage a fighting shot. And that's what I'm asking for. It's not White Mage to outdo Astro, but with these buffs, I'm asking for you to give White Mage a fighting chance. And I believe that this Temperance change would be incredibly healthy for the game. Now, the second change is put 10% mitigation onto Plenary Indulgence. And I kind of went back and forth between what if you put it on Asylum, and then I'm like, oh, Cole, you've played Scholar for so long, of course you'd want to make White Mage have Sacred Soil 2.0. Sorry. Probably true. So put 10% mitigation onto Plenary Indulgence. This is not unfair because it's in the same 60-second cadence as Collective Unconscious. However, Plenary Indulgence obviously has a heal component, and Collective Unconscious has a heal component. So I'm going to say this immediately, and I will even write it here on the sheet. Maybe I should mute real quick as I type it. Sorry, I just knew that the typing would probably be pretty loud there. Astro needs, in my opinion, this 8 yalm crappy thing to be buffed to 15 yalms. That is keeping it in line with abilities like Asylum and Divine Crest from White Mage, which is 15 yalms. That collective unconscious buff for Astro, I believe, is fair. But Plenary Indulgence, with all that taken into account, should get a 10% mitigation tapped onto it. So, an idea, and there's obviously more cases, but one idea would be a big burst of damage incoming. Pop Plenary early to mitigate that damage. Gotcha. Then you heal after that with Plenaries adding 50% more healing onto each of your Afflatus Rapture casts. Flat 200 potency. It works out to be 50%, just in case people time stamp skipped. So that I think would be fair, and I think that would put White Mage more in parity with Astro, and it would give White Mage a fighting chance in some of these PF groups, because that is such a pain point. Next thing is mobility, and White Mage easily has the worst mobility of all the healers, even with Aetherial Shift at this point in the game. Yes, Astro used to have it. Astro now gets Lightspeed, which I absolutely love. Such a great change. Astro feels marvelous with him. First potential change, which is not what I would want to see, but this is the easiest option. It is a numbers tweak to Dia, trivial change. Upgrade 75 potency to 220 potency or 200, anything. Make this higher than 75. And then Dia can be a fallback spell, basically like Scholar's Ruin 2. Doesn't need to be fancy, should still be lower than Glare cast, which would be. However, it allows the White Mage to recuperate some damage through movement. It's the simplest change in the world, takes no effort. That is the easiest change in the world. Next one, which is what I would actually want to see because it would diversify White Mage further from the other healers, is lower the cooldown of Aetherial Shift / add charge system. So at the moment, Aetherial Shift, which is this one, is 60-second cooldown, and you don't get a charge. So what if we change Aetherial Shift to be 2 charges, like Lightspeed? We're not talking about lowering the cooldown. We're talking about same 60-second charge time, but 2 charges of Aetherial Shift. AKA, we make it like Lightspeed, which I don't think is unfair, because literally them side by side, I don't think that's unfair. However, an Avant will be immediately what people say, but my dancer. You got 3 charges, and they charge at 30 seconds. This isn't game-breaking at all. We are not taking away the dancer's uniqueness. However, because the White Mage will be stunningly slower, because number 1, it has 1 less charge than Dancer. Number 2 is it literally has double the charge time. The Dancer could still be flipping around the field like crazy. But what this does is it allows White Mage to uniquely, because this isn't unique, adding a little bit of potency to Dia versus Rune 2, that's not unique. But this would be unique and really cool for the White Mage. I think that this would be truly fun. And would that be game breaking? You are literally looking at Lightspeed and you are telling me you think that that would be game breaking? Girl. Comments are gonna tell me, oh my god, Aetherial Shift with 2 charges would be game breaking. Me literally looking at Lightspeed like, brother, what? But I think it would be a cool change. That's the change I want, would be this one. Either lower the cooldown to 30 seconds, which I think would be crappy, because it's just give us some consequence, but give us 2 charges. I think that would be cool. I'd like that. I genuinely like that. Now, single target healing is a problem, and I don't want to hand wave this because we don't know the future ultimate content, and we are getting a Savage Criterion dungeon. We are, and I wish I brought it up more clearly during the single target healing section. We are getting Savage Criterion. We are, and we are also getting Savage Alliance raids, and I don't know how that'll be structured, but if it follows normal Alliance raids, you could be paired with another pure healer, which is it an Astro? So the Astro could make up for that. I mean, sure, we could go with that, but what if it's 2 White Mages? I mean, that would kind of suck, but I digress. Single target healing is deficient on White Mage. Period. end of discussion. It is deficient compared to Astro. Astro has a much deeper kit. And the reasons for that is mostly because the healing system for White Mage in excess single target damage dives into that same Lily system. That same Lily system, that is the mobility recoup tool for recuperating your damage that you'd lose from losing casts during movement, which is the same one as your AoE. So it's no wonder you have so many things at this one bottleneck, which is your Lily system. And so this will not solve all the problems with it, but I think that this would help. And I will say, Synastry, I can't think of a way to give White Mage something that would be like Synastry. I could probably sit down for like another day or two and think about it, but it's such a unique ability, and I do want to see this used. Like, so many people say prune Synastry. I say instead, give us mechanics in our Savage and Ultimates that make use of this. This is a cool effect. This is a cool thing that healers should be encountering. I'd rather see this than another stupid raid wide that we've already seen a bajillion times. Not that I think raid wides are stupid, but you get my point. Like, give us novel stuff. Give us a reason for this. This would be cool. Like, instead of M4S, like, splitting the arena in two during like Chain Lightning and only hitting one tank, make her absolutely, I'm censoring myself, make her obliterate the other tank at the same time. It would be so much more cool. So my recommendation, just skipping ahead, is Divine Benison is an ability on White Mage currently. It is basically the same thing as Celestial Intersection. Yes, we're not getting into the details here. Oh, it's 100 more potency barrier. And it has 200 potency healing here. Brother. But Divine Benison, I propose that the change for White Mage's Divine Benison is either, and I have a preference here that's realistic, and then I have a preference that is actually my preference. So attach onto Divine Benison either the healing overtime effect of the Ewer, which remember, these are Astro cards. The Ewer and the Bowl, these are Astro cards. These are totally free Astro cards that Astro gets. Attach this heal overtime effect onto Divine Benison. So you see Divine Benison, we just take its tooltip text, we just take this tooltip text, and then we're like, wow, we fuse it. So Divine Benison now creates that barrier, and it provides the heal over time effect of the Ewer. This would be the simplest way to make up for the White Mage not having the card system. And this is also the more realistic one, is adding this heal over time effect. I think this would be incredibly, incredibly fair. Because also that gives White Mage access to a heal over time effect off of the GCD, which the White Mage profoundly lacks otherwise. Another thing would be putting the Bowl card here. You see this one? 10% damage reduction. This is what I would actually want, but I actually don't see them doing this because that would give White Mage access to Aquaveil, 15% damage mitigation every 60 seconds, and then 2 charges on a 30-second charge timer of 10% mitigation. I cannot see the developers doing this. I want it. I really, really want it, but I can't see the developers doing that, even though they literally gave the Bowl to Astro. So, oh, I couldn't see the developers do that, but yet the Bowl exists. I'm literally getting flashbacks to what I just said about Lightspeed and people saying Aetherial Shift getting 2 charges would be broken. Oh, hello, person that sat beside me in game. I'm sorry, your name is off right now. You have a cute little corgi pet, but Drippy is better. Haha. Imagine if they watched this video. Oh my god. But I digress. But Divine Benison, I think, it just slap on the Ewer effect. That's truly what I think is the solution to this. I will add, we're also ignoring that these Astro cards also play with one another. And again, we don't know with the new Savage Criterion dungeons, we don't know with the new Ultimate if this will be necessary, but Astro can overlap Celestial Intersection and the Spire card, which the Spire is a 400 potency barrier. Do I have a tooltip of it nearby? No, I don't have it nearby. But you can see, clear as day, this is 800 potency of barriers. Like, How much would that be, Ponzi-wise? It would be like something like 30% or something. I'm just eyeballing it. I haven't ran any numbers, obviously. But 800 Ponzi barriers, like, that's really good. And they can stack. So the White Mage would still, fundamentally, not have that interaction, even if we added the Ewer effect onto Divine Benison. And I kind of think that that also exposes that even with these buffs, that the Astro would still have an edge. Even because, like, we still even don't have an answer to Synastry. And we still don't have an answer to, like, a bunch of other things. Like, White Mage, where's the healing amplification for White Mage? Like, if we look at this arrow card. So if you're with a Scholar, for instance, and you have that Scholar obviously want to deploy the biggest, fattest crit low barrier that the sun has ever seen. I mean, I used to call it the Thanos gauntlet of nullify this mechanic. But you would want to cast this arrow card onto tanks, such as like any tank can use Rampart now, and it's a healing amp. But now you could throw the arrow, and then the tank uses Rampart. Obviously, if it's a warrior, you could use Thrill of Battle and whatever else. And like the Bard could use Nature's Midday, and you get the gambit. But like you could nullify you with the arrow. Sorry, the arrow that the Astro gets is a healing amp. White Mage doesn't have an equivalent to that, and that's where even with these buffs, you can really see how the Astro still has a lot of interplay with the kit. Like the shield stack, you get different amps, you get different cleave tools. So even with every single buff that I proposed here, even with them, and even the Temperance Buff that I proposed, still makes neutral Sect significantly stronger than it. However, my point of like the recommendations here is not to make White Mage better than Astro. My goal of this video and like of talking about this so candidly and in such good detail is literally just to show how far behind White Mage is, and that there is a whole lot of merit and a whole lot of like good stuff that could be done and achieved if we give the White Mage a little bit more of a push. Like my buff proposed to Temperance is barely a 200 potency heal, which I do believe Astro's neutral Sect being on GCD should be stronger. But my goal was never to make White Mage dominate Astro. But even with these buffs, even if we give... even if we do that buff, that Aetherial Shift buff, that I know someone's going to tell me is overpowered and infringes on Dancer's dancing, I guess, which, even though it clearly doesn't. Even with this, Lightspeed, I will say Lightspeed is better than that. Even if you gave us freaking 3 charges of Aetherial Shift, I will say Lightspeed's better. Like, because it's just like, White Mage still doesn't have answers to Lightspeed helps you revive people quicker. There has literally been M4S groups that I have cleared through because of Lightspeed. Aetherial Shift being buffed isn't going to do that. None of these things are changing the fact that Presence of Mind is, and will probably always be, a DPS cooldown. And so, with all this being said, I think that these would be good steps towards bringing the White Mage in greater parity with Astro. Now, do I think Astro's overpowered? No. Do I think White Mage is underpowered? In certain situations, yes. Because it's just like, even where the White Mage wins, the Astro isn't deficient, which is like in raw HPS. Raw burst HPS. Because like we calculated the minimums and then the maximums. Where's the better examples of those minimums and maximums? Here. So White Mage's 60-second burst can, aggregated burst, got to 3640. Do you need 3640? Or is that going to be overheal? And see, that's the problem. But hopefully this video is a really good starting point to start to talk about these things, because while White Mage can clear, we are looking at a new ultimate coming. We're looking at more Savage tiers coming. We are looking at, obviously, Savage Criterion. We're looking at like a new exploration zone and much more content coming into 14. And I think that it would be nice to get a good grasp on some of these issues before they really kind of go out of control. Because like I could see, especially things like that single target thing. You're going to tell me when you are the only healer in there, which we already know, barrier healers have an excessively stronger advantage in Savage Criterion. Why are we making that even worse by making it so that White Mage is so deficient in single target healing, even compared to Astro? And we already know that Barrier healers are better than Astro. So why are we letting White Mage, like, fall behind so much more? And, yeah, hopefully this video not only showcased it, but also kind of proved some of the things that people have been saying. And, yeah, with that, I'm out.